The first capitalist in the world would be the guy, the caveman, that maybe dug a little hole for himself to shield himself from the elements, right? Maybe there was a rainstorm or a snowstorm and he dug a little enclave and he protected himself. Then the first communist or socialist would be someone that decided the fruits of his labor belonged to him. So he would have violently encroached on that individual and taken his plot for himself, for his own use. And that's the spectrum across which capitalism in the pure sense and communism in the pure sense operate. In that capitalism, each individual has the exclusive rights to the fruits of their labor. So anything they spend their time, effort, energy creating in the world, they own the rights to that, and they can trade those rights with others, other self-owned people that have done similar things. Communism or socialism would imply that other people, typically the state, have the rights, at least some rights to the value you've created.
So there's this interesting moment when that first caveman, that first capitalist, drew a line, a circle in this cave and said, this is mine. You could say it was free to be claimed at the time he claimed it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting moment when asset becomes an asset. When space-time, as you're referring to it, becomes something that's now can be possessed by a human being.
Mm-hmm. So in the ancient days of hunters and gatherers, we could say that property was mostly a allodial title, which meant it's just whatever you can defend, right? So if you've got knives and daggers and satchels and maybe some pelts you've hunted, whatever you can hold and defend is yours. And there's not like there's a government to appeal to. You're just sort of a free agent operating in the wild, defending the assets you can protect on you, more or less. And what really changed the nature of property is when we get into the agricultural age. So there's a big flip where we went from just foraging and hunting all the time, constantly moving, trying to stay alive, to deciding we're going to settle here. Mm-hmm. We figured out how to cultivate crops. We can create, we can increase the population because we can harvest more energy from the sun, and we can establish a longer term civilization. What happens in that transition is that we begin creating economic surplus. So for the first time in history, we have, grain, stock houses of grain to defend, or maybe meat or cattle or whatever it is we're creating. We now have savings. Mm-hmm. And it's at that time when government emerges as well. Because once you have savings or you have an economic surplus, you have something that other people want to steal, right? This one thing we'll touch on a lot today is people always want something for nothing. People are always seeking the path to get something for nothing. And I think that drives a lot of our decision making. And it actually encourages us to be innovative in a lot of ways, right? We're trying to, you could say it's our laziness. It's helping us be inventive in a way. We're trying to accomplish greater results with less efforts over time. But we can cross that line in seeking something for nothing where we start to violate the life, liberty, and property of others. And that's where we shift from kind of capitalistic society to something more communistic. And so that's what government is. It's a protection-producing enterprise for the economic surplus generated by a trading society. So when people begin to trade, they create what's called the division of labor, which is a very common economics term. Basically means you're better at making hats, I'm better at making boots. If you specialize in hats, I specialize in boots, and we trade, we've created a positive sum game where you and I both benefit. So we become collectively more than the sum of our parts through trade. And that's why human beings do trade, because we become more energy efficient as a result. We create more outputs per unit of input. And you could think of government in that respect, if we're looking at it maybe in a tech sense, that the economy is the trade network that generates wealth, generates innovation, generates all this whole lap of luxury we live in today that we've inherited from our forebears is from the market. It's not from a government. The government is the network security, if you will. So we're paying expenses to a vendor to protect peace, to preserve life, liberty, and property in that network, so that we can have, when there's inevitably disputes over private property, we can have nonviolent dispute resolution in the rule of law. And we can have a reasonable expectation of being able to conduct commerce without violence. The problem has been that the protector tends to, they're in a monopolistic position, we would say. They tend to start abusing that position to obtain property for themselves. Again, trying to get that something for nothing. When you control, you are the security guard for the economy. The first thing they tend to monopolize is money, because if you can control the money, you're effectively controlling people, their energy, their perceptions. And that becomes particularly through inflation, becomes an avenue to get something for nothing. And that you can just print more money that everyone else is forced to sacrifice their time and energy to obtain.